please.
My name is Joe Mora. I was born in New York City, November 5th, 1929.
Where in New York City?
East Harlem, on 5th Avenue between 113th and 114th, where my father had a hardware store.
Tell me about your parents. What were their names and where were they from?
My mother's name was Maria Beles Mora. She was from Puerto Rico. My father's name was Jose Mora, and he was from Aragon, Spain, from Spain. When my father left Spain and had two sons in Badalona, and then went to Paris and worked for Renault for 5 or 6 years, maybe 7, then went to Liverpool, then came to New York on a Norwegian freighter, shoveling coal, jumped ship on Cherry Street where the docks were, and there was, word of mouth was that there was a Spanish community in the Cherry Street area. Of course, later on it was an Italian community, a Jewish community, but at that time it was Spanish, although small, but there were Spaniards.
What year are we talking about, Joe?
I'm talking about 1920. East Harlem was comprised of, when I was growing up, even until I was 18, 19, we're talking about 116th Street to 110th Street, between Park Avenue and 5th Avenue. That was East Harlem, that little tiny area. I mean, I grew up among mostly Puerto Ricans, but my father and all the major, or what you might call in that area, the major small businesses, or the bigger of the small businesses, were all owned by Spaniards, even though the population was mostly Puerto Rican. The main business, as far as I can recall, was, of course, my father's business, the hardware store. The second one that I recall, next door was the Valencia Bakery. The Valencia Bakery was Valencia for the reason that the owners were, guess what, Valencianos. And my father being but he was always, he was the Aragonés. That's what. But the Valencia Bakery, they were Spaniards. Bustelo Coffee started out selling stuff door to door with a valise. We used to call them valises. That name is almost, ask any of your young kids, what's a valise? They go, a what? Okay, it was a, what the hell do you call it?
Suitcase?
A suitcase. So he'd open it up and he'd come into the stores and he sold combs, handkerchiefs, perfume, condoms, razor blades, and then he said, I remember the old man telling me, a little half-pound bags of coffee, nondescript, and he told I remember my father's story about this. He said, Mora, they used to call each other by last names. Mire, Mora, estoy vendiendo estos paquetitos de café de media libra. And they're selling like hotcakes. My father said, well, why don't you, he said, well, I can't, this before. Anyway, what I can recall is that my father loaned him, lent or loan? I never got that straight. Lent. Is it lent?
Lent, I think, yeah.
I prefer lent. Loaned him. Anyway, $500. He rented a store across the street from the hardware, which I'll show you in the photograph, and he opened up Bustelo Coffee Roasting Company. And it was a 2-story building, so the smokestacks of the coffee roasting came into our windows directly across the street into our main bedroom where we lived. I was so sick of the smell of coffee. Like people go, smells good. I used to get nauseous. Anyway.